Welcome everyone and thanks for watching this tutorial on e3d.com. My name is Simon Fuchs and I'm going to show you how to use decals that are integrated into the mesh in CryEngine. I'll explain in detail how to create your decal texture, set up your mesh, create the decal shader and the various ways of modifying the look of your decals in CryEngine. Let's get started. First, please extract the file that I've added to this tutorial into your CryEngine directory. We need to find two good photos that we can use to create our decal texture with. cgtextures.com is a great resource for that because they have a section with masked decal textures already. Enter it and look for two suitable textures. We are looking for a photo of a stain that is coming from the top and a stain that is building up from the ground. The two textures that I've selected here look pretty decent, so go ahead and download them in a high resolution and save them to your hard drive. Open Photoshop and create a new image with a resolution of 1024 by 512. I've already opened the two photos that I've just downloaded, the bottom stain here and the top stain here. Select everything in this photo and copy it. Paste it into the new image file and fit it to its dimensions. Use the free transform mode by selecting it from the menu or pressing Ctrl T on the keyboard. I'm not going to scale it down completely since I do want to get rid of that white line on the top in the texture. I leave the photo a little bit bigger than my workspace dimensions and move it up after I scale it down. This looks pretty good now. Just do the same with the bottom stain. Select everything and copy it and paste it to the new image file. Make it fit by using the transform tool again. You can quickly go into move mode by pressing V on your keyboard. As you can see, I'm leaving it a bit bigger than my workspace as well because I want to cut a small area on the bottom. Let's just move it down slightly and that's fine. Let's merge down everything to one layer and use the crop tool to get rid of the areas that I extended beyond my workspace. I need to make both photos tile now, so apply an offset filter with half of the image width, in our case 512 pixels. To get rid of the transparent pixel line here, just copy your layer and merge it down again. It's caused by interpolation when rescaling the photos. We do have a problem with the tiling here. The right half of our image has a different color than the left half. Let's copy each side by using the Select Rectangle tool and setting it to half of our image size, 512 pixels. I'm copying each side into its own layer. Since I've copied the top part as well, I need to delete it in my new layers. Select the upper half of the image and delete the top stained part from each layer. Select the right layer with the brighter green color and go to Image, Adjustments, Match Color. Choose your decal texture PSD file as source and select layer 3 as the target layer, which is the darker layer on the left. Photoshop will now try to match the color of my right layer as close as possible to my left layer. This is good enough, so let's collapse the two layers. Here's what it looks like before and after. Even though the result is not 100% perfect, we can use it to further modify the image. Let's just get rid of the unadjusted bottom stain part in the original layer and merge everything down to one layer again. All I need to do now is make the image tile. I'm using the Clone Stamp tool to achieve this. Specify the area the tool is sampling from by alt-clicking on any part of your image. After that, I'm just moving to the seam area and paste my sample area on top of it by left-clicking. I need to do the same for the top part of my image, so I'm just copying in parts of the stain on top of my seams. The preview in Photoshop CS5 is a really cool feature that allows you to see what your results will look like in real time before pasting in the source area. I want to add a text layer here in the middle, so I'm just deleting the areas of the stain that are on top of it between my guidelines. Next, I'm using the Erase tool with a suitable brush alpha to further refine the edges of my decals. I'm just using it to make the edges a little bit more interesting here and there. I'm also cleaning up the areas where I've used the Clone Stamp tool before a bit more. Let's use the offset filter again to bring the image back to its original position. I have to clean this seam here in the middle that was caused by using the match color function. To do this, I'm just using the same tools that I've used before, sampling in areas of the decal to mask the transition. I want to prevent having a white border on my decal in the engine later on, so I'm just copying my decal layer and apply a Gaussian blur filter with the value of 15. Copying the layer a couple of times and then merging it down again will create neighboring pixels around your decal that have the same color value than the original ones, which prevents a visible border in the engine later on. Make sure that you only apply this filter to copies of your original layer. Delete the areas where the new layer is penetrating the text layer. To create the text layer, I'm using the text tool with the impact font and a font size of 18. Just align it to the center of your selection. I now need to create the alpha mask for my texture. Copy the original decal layer and go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and set its saturation and lightness to -100. To copy everything that is displayed in your PSD file, go to Edit and then select Copy Merged. Create a new alpha channel by clicking on the Create New Channel button and paste in the image. Make sure to invert it by choosing Image, Adjustments, Invert, so that it displays correctly in CryEngine. White areas will become visible, black areas will become transparent. Here you can see the alpha channel displayed as a mask on top of my texture. Everything looks good, so I'm saving the texture. Choose File, Save As, and then select CryTiff as format. Go to your CryEngine 3 SDK directory, go into the Game folder, into the Objects folder, into the Decals folder, and create a file called decals_diff.tiff. Click on Save to open up the CryTiff plugin. Set Reduce Resolution to -1 to ensure that we're going to have a game resolution of 1024 by 512 pixels. Set the preset to diffuse low quality. Click on OK to generate the TIFF file. Let's move on to 3D Studio Max, create the material file, set up our objects and export everything to CryEngine. Click on File, Open, and then go to your CryEngine 3 SDK folder, into the Game folder, into the Objects folder, into the Decals folder, and open the decals.max file. There's two objects in the file, one is called Decals Complex and the other one is called Decals Simple. As you can see, they do not have a material assigned, so let's go ahead and create one. Click M on your keyboard to open up the material editor and then click on Get Material. Choose Multi-Sub-Object and set the amount of submaterials to 2. We're going to use one material ID for the wall and one material ID for the decal. The name of the material needs to represent the path of the material in your CryEngine SDK, so call it objects/decals/decals.mtl. Name submaterial ID number 1 wall and submaterial ID number 2 decals. Select everything in your scene and assign the material that we've just created to the objects. Enter the first submaterial ID by clicking on the button and set the shader to CryTex shader. Go into the Map slot and load the diffuse texture. You can find it in your Objects folder, in the Decals folder, and it's called concrete_diff.tiff. Make sure to click on the Enable Show Map in Viewport button to see it in the viewport. Don't forget to name the first material Wall as well. Enter your second submaterial ID and call it Decals. Set the shader to CryTex shader again and then go to the Map slot. Enable Diffuse Color and choose the texture. It's called decals_diff.tiff. Enable Show Map in Viewport. Copy your material and paste it in the opacity slot by right-clicking. Make sure to set mono channel output to alpha to enable transparency in your viewport. We now need to create the material in CryEngine. Make sure that the parent level of your multi-sub-object is selected and then go to the Material tab of your Exporter tab. Click on Create Material under the From Max to category. CryEngine 3 SDK will start. Just log in and then wait for the material editor to open. Click on Create Material again to create the material in the path that you've specified in Max. Just type in decals.mtl to create it. As you can see, both of our submaterial IDs are here and the material has been created. The submaterial IDs are named correctly in CryEngine according to the name of your material in Max. The textures have been loaded as well. Let's take a closer look at the decals simple object. Hide everything else and select the decals alpha part of the object. Right-click on it in the viewport and select Object Properties. Enable the checkbox for Vertex Channel Display and set it to Vertex Alpha. As you can see, the vertices of the object have different vertex alpha values assigned. A vertex with a vertex alpha value of 100 will become fully opaque, whereas a vertex with a vertex alpha value of 0 will become fully transparent in CryEngine. The decal on the bottom has a vertex alpha value of 0 on the left and 100 on the right, which means it would fade in from left to right. Select the decal's color part of the object, go to its Object Properties, enable Vertex Channel Display and set it to Vertex Color. As you can see, the vertices have been tinted in different colors. By doing this, you can easily color your decals without having to create a new shader with a different diffuse setting. On top of your vertex color, you could also add vertex alpha values to fade in or fade out different parts of your decal. The decal's color object is only using vertex color in my example scene. If you take a closer look at the decal's complex object, you can see that it is using slightly more complex geometry with the decal stain in the middle and decals on top and on the bottom of the object. Select the dummy helpers of the decal simple and the decal's complex objects. Add them to the exporter list by clicking Add Selected. Make sure the Export File per Node checkbox is enabled and the Merge All Nodes checkbox is disabled. Click on Export Nodes to export both objects and create the CGFs. Open CryEngine and load the forest level. In your Objects tab, click on Brush and add the two objects that we've just exported to the scene. Go to Objects, Decals and add both the Decal Simple and Decals Complex CGFs to the level by dragging them into the viewport. You can easily snap objects onto each other by Ctrl-Shift left-clicking on any object. Position both objects in the level and close the roll-up bar. To adjust the materials, open the Material Editor by pressing M on the keyboard. Make sure one of your objects is selected and click on the Get Item from Selected Object button. This automatically selects the material that the selected CGF is using, in our case the decals material that we've created earlier. We need to adjust the lighting settings first, so click on Diffuse Color and enter 120, 120, 120. For the specular color, let's choose something slightly bluish. The glossiness should be set to about 15. Load the normal map that is called concrete_ddn.tif into the bump map slot. In the detail slot of your shader, load a detail bump map. Go to Game, Textures, Detail, and then select detail_concrete_ddn.dds. Go to your shader generation params and enable detail bump mapping. Set detail tiling U and V to 3. To use the diffuse map of the concrete wall as a specular map, set diff gloss amount to 1. Set diff gloss brightness to 0.3 and increase the contrast of your specular texture by setting diff gloss contrast to 1.87. Now we need to set up the shader for the decal. First, set the opacity to 99 to enable alpha blending and to enable the transparency in your viewport. As you can see, the masked areas in your textures are now transparent. Set the diffuse color to 110 and enable decal and vertex colors in the shader generation params. This tells the shader to use the vertex alpha and vertex color values that you've set up in Max. Go back to your wall material ID and enable vertex colors as well. Let's compare the results in CryEngine with our setup in 3D Studio Max. To get a better view of the gradients in the vertex alpha and vertex color, go to the Display tab of your roll-up bar and change the shaded view from Object Color to Material Color in the Display Color tab. As you can see, the upper decal is set to be fully opaque. Let's set its vertex alpha to 25 to decrease its opacity to 25%. Make sure the object is added to the exporter list and re-export. Switch back to CryEngine to check the mesh. The mesh was automatically updated and you can see that the upper decal is barely visible anymore. Go back to Max and set up a gradient from 50% opacity on the left to 100% opacity on the right. Re-export and observe how the object behaves in CryEngine. As soon as you re-export, your mesh is automatically updated and you can see that the upper gradient has changed. Observe the lower gradient with its transition from full transparency on the left to full opacity on the right as well. Let's change the vertex color on the text to show you how easy it is to color something. Just select the vertices of your text decal and color it with any color you like. With this approach, you can easily create different colored decals like tags or graffiti without having to create an excessive amount of different color textures. Just re-export and go back to CryEngine. As you can see, the colors have immediately updated. Let's take a look at the decals complex object. I've added different gradients to the decals to make areas that are more exposed less affected by the dirt. The center part of the wall has a lower opacity value in the decal than the corner pieces where dirt would naturally build up over time. As you can see, this is reflected in CryEngine perfectly. Let's take a look at the stain in the center. All I've done here is I've reused the tiling decal and added some cuts in the geometry to be able to fade out the decal on the corners. You can check the different vertex alpha values in the sample max file that comes with this tutorial. If I change any of the values here and re-export, you can see that the object immediately updates in CryEngine again. So far, I've only shown you all the settings that you need to create your own decals and modify their transparency and color. Don't forget that you can play with the shader settings of the decal further. If you change the diffuse color, you can give the decals different looks, from more mossy stains to stains that look more like they have been generated by basic weathering. You could also add a normal map allowing you to create decals with more depth, or change the specularity settings in the decal shader allowing you to create a wet look or all kinds of other cool effects. If you create your own decals, please make sure to merge them into the render mesh before the final export and also move them as close to the surface as possible. Thanks for watching this tutorial.